everybody, welcome to the 4th installment of QWR Nature News. I'm Kim and Renee is here, but she's just off camera at the moment. And today we want to talk to you about some critters that you might not get a chance to meet as just a visitor at the refuge. But first, I have a joke about them. So what is worse than finding a worm in an apple? Renee, do you have an idea?
I don't know.
Finding half a worm in an apple, or a quarter or a third of a worm. So today we want to talk to you about, and some of you who have visited before may have seen this bin here at the Nature Center. So I want to talk to you about these really cool worms. So these are actually called red worms or red wigglers. Hold on, I got to get my worm out here. And it's probably a bit hard for you to see them right now, but they're really these tiny, tiny little worms. And they actually are in the phylum Annelid. And annelid means basically in Latin, ring. And these guys have 120 muscular rings all across their body. And those rings are responsible for all the movement that they have and for moving food through their digestive system. I have a little picture here right now. So basically, these guys, they're really small, as you can see, and their head and their rear look kind of the same. So it can be kind of hard to tell what's the front and what's the back. But basically, their head is usually a little bit wider than their tail end. And you can see they don't have eyes like we do, but they do have a photosensitive head. So that basically means that their head can detect the light, and they can move based on that. And you can see they have a little mouth here. And what they do is they kind of have these special cells that are around their mouth that can detect food that's in the soil and in the ground, and they can pull that into their mouth. But while they pull that food particle into their mouth, they're also pulling in different kinds of minerals and different kinds of sand. And as they pull that in, it all mixes together, and their muscular body kind of mixes all that stuff around, and that's how they digest food for the most part. That's how they break it down. And now that all moves through their digestive system into their small intestine, or not their small intestine, just their intestine. And that's actually about 2/3 of their body, which is incredible. Oh, and worms actually also have some really other cool features about their anatomy. So you can see on this picture, see my actual worm is a little too small to show you guys this stuff. They have 5 hearts, and they're all located really close to the top of their head. And that's important for something that Renee is going to talk about in a little bit. So these guys are really, really, really incredible little creatures. You ready?
Yeah. All right, so just like Kim was saying, they have 5 hearts. So everyone always wonders, you may have tried this experiment when you were a kid. Everybody always wonders, if you cut a worm in half, do you have 2 worms? Well, it depends on the type of worm. So in this category of worms, earthworms, annelids, like red wigglers, they are actually really amazing at regeneration, but it is in a limited capacity. So these guys, if you do cut towards the end of them in a tail section, they can regenerate their tail, but they cannot regenerate their head. So they have to still have a lot of their parts intact. They can only regenerate their tail section. There are categories of worms, planarians. They actually are a group of flatworms, and they have been studied, and scientists have been able to cut them in thirds, cut them diagonally or on an angle, and these flatworms are actually able to regenerate in multiple worms anywhere they cut them. So they can regenerate into 3 separate worms, although each of these worms still has the same genetic material, so there's no genetic diversity with these. So that kind of brings us into reproduction. So reproduction of these worms is a very interesting feat. We've got some worm escapees right here. Oh. I might put them down into their compost. They're coming out of the cup. They're going to be all over the table. So these worms are hermaphrodites, which means they have both male and female parts. So what's really incredible is after mating takes place, both individuals then go on to lay eggs. So the eggs, I do have a couple eggs on a piece of paper, but they're specks. They're teeny, teeny, tiny. You can see they're just little tiny specks. But these eggs, this is actually not even really the individual egg. So in that's called a cocoon. So these, I have a better picture right here. This is someone's fingertip. So you could see how small it is compared to the fingertip. So this is actually a cocoon. So after mating takes place, these worms develop a cocoon along their body. They then slither it off of their body and they'll lay it, you can see it right here, right here. They'll lay them on top of the composting material. And in this cocoon, there could be at least 3 worms, so 3 eggs. So after they slide it off of their body, it actually hardens into this protective outer casing. And then these will hatch worms. If it's the proper conditions, it usually will hatch worms within 2 to 3 weeks. But what's really incredible is these worms, if it is in proper conditions, or these cocoons can actually withstand so many different environments. So they can go into freezing environments, withstand freezing temperatures, they can withstand drought, and really wet areas. So they can live up to a year before they hatch if the conditions are improper. So if they are good conditions, they'll hatch within 2 to 3 weeks. And then within 2 to 3 months, they're ready to have their own eggs and develop their own eggs. They're already fully matured. So they live about a year to even 4 years or more in captivity, where they lack predators. So that's better for them. What's really incredible though is one worm can lay about 2 of these cocoons in a week. So over a period of 3 months, your population is actually doubling. So every 3 months, the population of these worms is doubling. So that's incredible. These guys are really good at reproducing. So Kim also gave me the topic. I think she thinks it's my favorite topic.
Sorry, Renee.
You might know what I'm going to talk about. Poop. Worm poop, right? Worms are really good. We like these guys because they're decomposers and they turn garbage basically into soil. So these guys are really amazing. So worm poop is called a worm casting, or what's it called, Kim?
Oh, vermicomposting.
Vermiculture or wormiculture, right? So this, when they're processing their food, Kim did show you this, all the undigested material comes out, and it's soil, it's some of the gut bacteria that they had, good bacteria for the environment. So they harbor lots of bacteria from their food in their stomach, in their gut, and then in their intestines, and then some of that comes out on their food too. So that's good bacteria for the environment. So when they poop or cast out material, it's really good for the environment. It's actually liquid gold, right? This is great for them. This soil is perfect for composting. It's actually 10 times better than your backyard compost, this worm compost, which is amazing. So this is all the undigested material. Secretions that, like urine secretions, actually liquid waste comes out through their skin, through their body, which is kind of strange. And then you can actually capture some of the liquid. This is all liquid that we harvested from our composting bins as well. So this is really great to use on your plants as well. And the sooner you harvest your compost, the better, because it will have more of those good bacteria and it will be richer if you harvest it faster. So that's a better time to use it right away after they cast it. So I think we're going to talk about how to make a compost bin.
So as you can see here, we have everything laid out that you need for your compost bin. So the first thing you need is something to put your compost and your worms in. So we have this plastic bin, and if you can see, there's some vents put into the side. So you wouldn't need help from a parent, but basically you can buy these vents right at the hardware store. You could probably buy this bin at the hardware store. You can buy it online, and you just want to cut holes in the side for these vents. And these vents are going to keep airflow going through your compost. So you don't want everything to sit in there without any aeration, because that's when it can get moldy or it can start to smell bad. So these vents are really, really important. So that's the first step. Then your second step is you want some plain old newspaper. So it's best to use just black and white newspaper. It's kind of hard to find now, but black and white newspaper. And what you're going to do is you're going to soak that newspaper in water for about a half an hour to 60 minutes. And you want it to be moist, but you don't want it to be so wet that it's going to be falling apart. And then also what we like to use is coconut fiber. And I have actually the package that we use here, and you can get all this stuff online. And I know you're all home right now, so this is the time to make your worm bin. So this is what we use. You can get it right online. You could order it from Petco. And basically, you're gonna just mix all this stuff together. You'll get your coconut fiber in there, you'll have your paper, and then you also need a pound of worms. And we actually buy our worms online too. Yes. The post office is gonna love you guys. So then you basically are gonna mix all that stuff together, and we'll post actual instructions about how to create a worm bin right online. And it's really easy. It doesn't smell. You can have it in a really small container. Some people keep them under their kitchen sink. And 1 pound of worms can actually consume 3.5 pounds of food scraps a week, which is just incredible. That's most of the scraps you're going to have coming out of your kitchen. And then at the end of it, you're going to have amazing compost for your garden. So worm bins are really pretty cool. And then when people ask you what kind of pets you have, you can say, oh, I have like about 500 worms in my kitchen. Don't worry about it. And now Renee is going to talk to you guys a little bit more about how to keep your worm bin healthy.
All right, so you can, so the big problem that we have with our worm bins is sometimes they do get a little bit too wet. You might have a problem of them being too dry. You can miss them if they're too dry. If they're too wet, though, you can actually, you can actually just add more newspaper, more dried coconut fiber. So this comes in a compressed block that you actually have to wet and it expands. You could use peat moss or soil as well. And then you can even use dried material like dried leaves. So that will be fine for this as well. But what to feed your worms after they've gotten started on their coconut fiber and their paper? What you need to do is you need to feed your worms each day. And just like Kim was saying, they can eat a lot of food, 3.5 pounds a week of food. So that's a lot of food a week. So things to feed them, we will post a table like this online, but these are really good. There's a lot of good resources out there. And it's kind of common sense. Things that you think might get smelly in there, usually don't put in there, right? So things like meat, cheeses, dairy products, no good in here. Eggs, no good in here. But things you can put in here, most fruits and vegetables are really good to put in here. Apple cores, you might have seen we have an apple core in here that the worms do really like. You can use banana peels. Citrus fruits are not so great because the chemical inside of their peels is the worms really don't like, and it could be a little bit harmful in mass amounts to them. But most other fruits are really good. Most other vegetables are really good in here. And then things you want to do occasionally are things like cardboard you can do. Just make sure there's not a lot of glue in that cardboard. You can do things like eggshells or coffee grinds can go into these, but you need to do them at lower amounts. So we'll post a picture, a diagram of things that are good and things that are not so good. A little pyramid of when to feed, how often to feed it. Sometimes people ask us if they can use paper that they've shredded, regular documents that they've shredded. White paper like this is bleached, so it's not always that good. You can do it in small amounts, but it's also a lot heavier than newspaper. So what it does is it gets really, really wet and damp, and it kind of mats the composting down and creates like a really wet layer at the bottom, and it also reduces a lot of oxygen flow. So the newspaper is really fluffy. You can spread it around, create pockets of air in there. That's much better for your compost bin. All right. Oh, things like starchy foods like pizza crust, pancakes, maybe leftover piece of bread you've got. Those are only good in moderation. It takes the worms a lot more time to digest those things, to break those things down. So do those in moderation. And again, we'll post that. So I think we're going to open up for some questions, right, Kim?
Yeah.
All right, some questions. I'll step behind the table so you can see some of these materials still. Anybody have questions about worm composting? We'll just give you a little bit of time since it's on a little bit of a delay. Maybe I'll take it off. Sure, if you want to. Okay.
Any questions about worms or anything like that? I'm going to take this off so we can do some close-ups.
Yeah. got a little stink bug trying to get into our worm bin.
Ooh. Oh, here. Give you guys a close-up. Not for you, little guy.
No.
I don't know.
Sometimes you might have other animals. If your worm bin is really damp, you will sometimes get small things like mites and stuff inside of your worm bins. Fruit flies are easily avoided by trying to stay away from a lot of the foods that will target them.
Very cool. We'll show you. We'll give you a sneak peek inside the worm bin.
Ours is a little damp right now, so we did add a lot of newspaper into it. Sometimes we'll just take a big handful of leaves from outside.
Oh, we have one question. How many worms do we have?
Oh, right. Different types, species of worms?
Or I think just number-wise. You know, it's kind of hard to say because they do reproduce, as Renee was saying, pretty rapidly.
Yeah, our worms, you know, they can double their population every 3 months, so
yeah,
that's a lot.
Lots of worms. But, oh, we have another question. Oh, if we can make a craft for people to do at home about worms. And I have to say, we would love to do that.
Oh,
that sounds like a great idea.
We can post that as well. I'm sure we have a bunch, actually.
Yeah. Oh, how do worms eat if they don't have eyes? Well, like I was saying before, here we got a little worm here. You guys can say hello to him. So they actually have special cells on their head that help them find food. And they do have like photosensitive cells on their head too that can detect light, but it doesn't necessarily help them find their next meal. So they kind of just, like we have, you know, scent cells, they kind of sniff it out. All right. Oh, can a worm live with only 4 hearts? You know, I'm not sure. I think...
I'm not sure either.
Yeah. We know if you're...
I think that they can't, at least ragged wigglers can't reproduce their organs. They can't regenerate their organs, I mean. So I doubt that they could because their hearts are before the rest of their organs. So
oh,
if
yes.
they can't regenerate them, then I would think that they couldn't survive without one of their hearts.
That makes sense.
They can only really regenerate their tail, kind of like a lot of reptiles do, right?
Very cool. I think that's all the questions we have for now. So we'll say thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions at all about worm bins or if you want to start your own, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're going to post instructions and probably we'll be updating you guys with a really cool worm craft in the next couple days. So keep your eyes peeled. And please tune in on Thursday. We're going to have a really cool talk for you guys with some more live critters. So yeah, please check it out. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.